Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
Welcome back. On a recent Solo Thoughts episode, number 5, I talk about how single people need a new story, a new narrative, a new way to think about their life. I present the 3 R's, recognize, rebel, and reinvent, as a way to think about living single in a world that pushes you towards marriage. This episode is part of a mini-series that investigates the reinvention step, how to structure your life in order to live it remarkably as a single person. I speak to Kimmy Seltzer. Kimmy helps people develop confidence and charisma, and what I like about her approach is that it has similarities to my reinvention step. Kimmy takes an outside-in approach where she helps her clients improve their looks first and then move on to more social, emotional, and psychological issues. In particular, look out for her red dress moment. You might find it inspirational. It's a fun conversation where we also cover what makes someone charismatic. And you can find out if George Clooney is really that charismatic in real life. Bonus materials back for the solo community. In this one, Kimmy gives you some tips on how to flirt. You can access the bonus material by joining the community Slack channel via the solo page at petermcgraw.org. As always, please rate and review. Tell your friends and family about the podcast. I hope you enjoy the episode. Let's get started. Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Kimmy Seltzer. Kimmy is a confidence therapist and authentic dating strategist. An LA-based expert, she helps people discover confidence, charisma, and connection as a speaker at national matchmaking conferences, eHarmony, Neutrogena, UCLA, and iDate. She's also a regular contributor to the Huffington Post, has appeared in Cosmopolitan, Oprah Magazine, Redbook, Reader's Digest, Ask Men, and Fox News Magazine, among many others. You can also find Kimmy as the love expert on the traveling live dating show, The Great Love Debate, and the cable reality dating show, The Romance. Finally, find her on her podcast, which I'm going to be a guest, The Charisma Quotient. Welcome, Kimmy.
Hi, good to be here.
Yes, this is
out of my cocoon.
we are
cocoon.
We are socially distancing recording. Kimmy, this is an episode that's part of a mini-series that I'm doing. I've been sort of experimenting with these mini-series on reinvention. And so if I may recap, this is from a previous episode in which I do what I call solo thoughts, where I don't subject my guest to my ideas. I only subject my listeners to them. But in it, I put forth this idea that singles, the people who are single, they need a narrative. They need a story, especially if they are celebrating their singlehood, especially if they think that their singlehood is going to last a long time, maybe forever. And that, like many things, we tell ourselves stories. And the world doesn't give single people a good story about their life. And so I want to put forth a way for people, a model. I'm a behavioral scientist, so I want to put this stuff down. And so I call it the 3 R's. So the first R is to recognize, to see the arbitrariness and the mythology related to marriage. That is that this is a social construct. It was made up for reasons that aren't necessarily there to make you, any one individual, happy, healthy, better off. The second is to rebel. This is an act of defiance to recognize that marriage might not be for you. It might not be a good fit. It may not be good at this time of life, and that the world can't tell you what's good for you. And then the last one, which I want to talk about today, is this act of reinvention. Once you realize there's this false narrative in the world, that you are going to move against it, you have an opportunity to play by a whole new set of rules. And you get to recreate yourself in the world. And that's where you come in part because you help people reinvent themselves, among other things. And you've had your own reinvention. And I'm going to tee this up by asking you to tell the world about your red dress moment.
I'm so glad you asked, because I'm like, we cannot go into this without telling my story, because I have a story. And honestly, I mean, my bio, I always like chuckle when people read my bio, because I mean, it's been great, like having all this professional experience and helping people. But really, the reason why I'm so passionate about doing what I'm doing is because of my own transformation, my own reinvention, if you will. And it was funny, because if you were to ask me years ago, when I was practicing as a therapist in Chicago, living my traditional life in my traditional home with my traditional picket fence, I would never have thought that I was going to be here. You know, so that was my life. You know, gosh, if we could rewind 18 years ago, and there I was. And I had a fairly good life, you know, so I thought. And then we, as a family, picked up and we moved across the country to here, La La Land. And we land here and we do what all the other people here do. We get a divorce. And I'm just kidding. You just got here, so you haven't seen it yet. But no, obviously there were other issues going on in this fairy tale, right? And yeah, you have a question.
I do. I'm curious why the move?
Well, actually, my ex at the time, he had an opportunity here. Okay. And I had family, and I've always wanted to be in a warm climate. Sure. I wanted palm trees. I was sick of the snow. So we took the opportunity. And it's like when that happened, it was like the record stopped. You know, everything that I knew in a traditional sense just was like collapsing before me. And I had no idea what I was going to do with my new life. And here I was, a therapist. I should know better. Like, I should know how to get out of my own way. But there I was, stuck in this like new castle with no friends, a little bit of family, and not knowing what I was going to do with my new life. And so, you know, when you look ahead of you and there's like a fork in the road and you could go down one path, you know, and you have a choice to make. And I have to tell you, the path that I was going down was a very dark path, and my clothes reflected it. So if you were to see me back then, I did not look like how I do today. I was this like sad, frumpy mom with ginormous black clothes. I still had my nursing bras on, and I was not nursing any longer. Okay. That shows you how stuck I was in my clothes, in my mindset.
Well, I have to tell you, you are wearing fabulous shoes right now.
You noticed.
I noticed them immediately. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So men notice shoes, ladies, and vice versa, but we'll talk about that in a second. So I did not know what I was, and here I was, like I did all this inner work. And up until then, mind you, and you'll appreciate this given your background, I used to work from the inside out. I believe that we had to really do that inner work, and, you know, and obviously that's what I help people with as a therapist. But here I was. I got counseling myself, support. I had my family and friends rally around me, and I still couldn't get out of my own way. So I'll never forget, one day I got out of bed and I looked in the mirror and I was just horrified. And I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I have to do something. And I looked in my closet and all I saw were black clothes, a little splash of beige. And I said, I'm going shopping. I'm going to do a little retail therapy. I'm going to get just out of this, right? So I go shopping. What do? I pick all the same clothes again. Now, I think I'm up leveling myself, right, by getting like new clothes. But no, they were black and they were 3 sizes too big, right? So this personal shopper, she was watching me. And she comes up and she's like, ma'am, you know, I've been watching you and I think that you should try this on. And she holds up, lo and behold, the red dress. And it looked like 3 sizes too small. And I said, ma'am, that's so sweet of you, but that's really not my size.
Was she young and hip and so on, or was she more close to your,
Do you know what's funny? I don't even remember. I remember in my mind just the figure of her holding up that red dress. I mean, you know, all the department store people always wear black anyway, which I thought was kind of funny because she's holding up a red dress and she's in black. But I said to her, you know, it's too small. That's not, and it's red. Like, that's really not me. And she said, honey, that is you. That is your size. Try it on. That was my red dress moment. It was like she hit me over the head with that red dress and I collapsed and I came to and I said, you know what? she's right. I'm going to try that dress on. And so I remember, trying it on begrudgingly and putting it on, and I twirl around like Cinderella and I look in the mirror and I was like, bam. Wow. I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw almost a princess before me, and I just haven't seen that woman in a very long time. And I bought that dress as a costume almost.
Okay.
Because I still don't believe it, but I was going to go out into the world and wear it and marinate in it and see what happened. And so I walked out into the world in the red dress, and all this magic that you heard in my bio started happening to me. I mean, new suitors began to come my way. I started getting noticed. My confidence started growing. And I realized there was a symbiotic relationship between the outer and the inner, that this wasn't just superficial stuff, that I had to viscerally feel something in my body, see myself differently in order to create change and movement for me. And I realized that my black clothes, now that I look back, was a cloak. It was to keep me invisible from what you used to call aliens, you men over there. Like, I was scared of you guys. Like, I'm not going to lie. And my black clothes was a way to keep me invisible. And so putting myself in a red dress and getting used to being seen.
And complimented.
Huge. And complimented. Yes. And embracing that and seeing myself as a sexy woman again. Like, that was huge. And so from that moment on, I realized that I think people need to take action and do things in action in order to create change. So now I work from the outside in. And so how my charisma quotient formula was born was basically looking at people's outside first, starting with what I call style intelligence. We're going to be intelligent here, so I'm going to bring intelligence to the table. And the style intelligence is your first impressions, how you market yourself, your body language, your clothes, right? And then I go inward and work on emotional intelligence, how we express ourselves, vulnerability, authenticity, how we express our feelings so that we connect with one another. Then the third pillar is social intelligence. That's how we manage interpersonal communication. That's how we interact with the world. Before COVID hit, I used to do these wing girl sessions where I go out and help people. And yes, that includes flirting.
Yes.
Like how we give signals and how we connect with others. And so for me, I now look at people as a ginormous puzzle. And it's looking at those three pillars and saying, hey, where are the pieces that are missing to plug in to make it whole, to create new patterns for people?
Okay. So we're actually going to return to the flirting with the bonus material. So the bonus materials on flirting is going to be
Do you like how I flirted with that? So just to tease people about that? Yeah.
Indeed. So we're going to return to that at the end for folks in the solo community. So you have these three pillars. The first is style intelligence. The second one is
emotional
intelligence. And then the last one is social intelligence. Now, this is not stepwise necessarily, or do you have like style on the foundation and then emotional and social? Like, do you start with one typically?
I start from the outside.
Okay,
so I start with style because, if you think about the other two, and when we work on the inside, that takes time. It takes time to create new habits and patterns.
It may take years.
Sometimes beyond years. Sometimes never.
Yes.
But the thing about style
is it happens in an instinct.
Poof.
Yes, that's right.
Which happened to me in my red dress moment, which happens to endless, clients that I've worked with when they walk out of the dressing room and suddenly they walk out a little taller and they feel a little sexier. And And there's a lot of research out there. Like I know you do, research on humor and stuff like that. I do the same thing with image. It's, image, if you look at the definition, is how people perceive you, and that determines how people treat you.
And then it determines how you feel about yourself.
Exactly. And it is symbiotic. So I love that because there's not too many things in life that you get that instant gratification other than Bumble and Tinder, but you get my point.
Yes.
Like, that is something that is workable, and it also increases your confidence big time. I have
so many reactions to this. So this is very exciting. So, for the regular listeners, some of what Kimmy is saying, I think, has been reflected in some previous episodes. So we had an episode called Clothing the Solo. Where these topics have come up a little bit. And the idea being that not only does it, when you dress well, you feel more confident, but then people treat you better, which then, as you said, has this feedback loop, which I think is really good. It also is related, and what got me really excited about your red dress moment when I read about it was that it's related to our Solo Promise episode, where we talk about this alternative narrative that is fairy tale based, that's not hero based. And so there's an actual in this. So Kim Hudson wrote this book called The Virgin's Promise, and it's about internal change, which allows people to break out from their, this is my term, human domestication, from the world that they live in, that they don't quite fit in. And one of those beats in the narrative is dressing the part. And she specifically uses Cinderella putting on the dress as an example of that moment where Cinderella captures a taste of what this other life might look like.
That's really funny. I didn't even know that. I used the Cinderella in the story. That's funny.
Indeed. So that, I think that thing is it's really, really good. And I completely agree with you about this, how it can be done quickly. And so as part of this reinvention, as I'm imagining it, I call it your tidying up process. So how do you tidy up your life? And many of those steps in tidying up your life are, as you say, external steps. And they exist for the same reasons that you've identified. One is they're fast, they're effective, they're noticeable, and you get a feeling of accomplishment. So that might be tidying up your workspace and your living space, getting rid of things.
Getting rid of the nursing bras.
Indeed. The things that you've outgrown and so on in your life. And then one of those things might be tidying up your hair, your clothing, and so on, in part because those things can be so profound. And this keeps coming up as a theme. And so it's really wonderful to not only hear your own personal story and how this set you, which I want to hear more about now, if you may, on this entire different path in terms of career approach, and not just that you're getting compliments, but your entire path, as you said, a fork in the road, that you've taken a different fork.
Yes. And I learned that when I turned around and I went to the other, yellow brick road, that I just kept collecting tools in my little basket, like Dorothy, along the way. And with each life experience and with each client that I've served, I think that there's more and more information that I've gathered and how to help people, both outside and in. And to me, like, the empowerment comes from when people have that confidence. So now, like, I call myself a confidence therapist and an authentic dating strategist, because I used to call myself like a dating coach like everybody else, but I think it's beyond that. I think it's really, I think people are ready for strategies and an action plan, because I think at some point, like, everything can be in your head and analysis paralysis kicks in. At what point do you put down something like a blueprint for yourself so that you create that change?
Okay, so let's talk through these pillars. So the style intelligence. So my guess is you're not only pushing people to make these changes, try new clothes, tidy up, to use my term, tidy up their look and other things, but you're also teaching them how that they can do that moving forward so they can make those decisions in the future.
Oh, yeah.
And what might that look like? Well,
it looks different for everybody. There's a formula that I call the 3 C's. I like formulas too, like you. And it's a really easy thing that everybody can actually do right now, even in their own closet. And it's a good way for them to understand, what their body type is and what looks good on them, so that they can. My whole thing is I want people to learn how to shop on their own, how to feel good, and empower them to do it on their own. So the first C is what I call confidence clothing. And that is, like, everybody has something in their wardrobe that they feel confident in. If they had a date tomorrow, they have a interview or something they grab that is like their usual outfit. So it's like, take a look at that outfit and determine, what do you like about that? Is it something that you feel comfortable in? Do you get complimented on it? What's the cut? Does it flatter your figure? And then the second C is the cut of the clothes. Now, I'm very scientific in the way I approach clothes. Okay. So it's not just, me being a stylist from LA and say, oh, just wear this, it's fabulous. I mean, I like to teach people about their body type. If you're a woman, there are 5. If you're a man, there are 3 body types. And I do have free guides for your listeners if they're if you're and your listeners are interested. So basically you measure yourself. If you're a woman, your shoulders, your waist, your hips, and you determine what body type you are. And my guide goes over what clothes flatter that figure and what clothes to stay away from. And that makes a huge difference in the way that you look. And that creates the confidence in your clothing. And then the third C is your colors, of course. Yes. Color's huge when it comes to attraction, when it comes to power, when it comes to sales. I mean, there's a lot of psychology with colors. So, I love teaching, people just those 3 C's first. And then from there, understand what's missing in their first impression. What's really interesting about first impressions is that when you do studies on this, inside the brain, what happens, and first impressions now are only 7 seconds.
Yeah, it's super,
crazy.
It's super fast where people come to these judgments. They don't even know they're making the judgments.
No. And the 2 things that happen in the brain are they're making their judgments and assumptions based on the clothes that people wear and the attitude. That's it. So people get so caught up in oh my God, what do I say? What do I say? It's not even as important what to say, but how you show up. That's important. 93% of communication is nonverbal. So that's, again, the exciting part. So I love working with body language and clothes at the same time in ways of improving their attraction factor, their approachability, how they're marketing themselves. And I really like to come at it at a marketing angle because that also includes online photos. So I do a lot of work with people's online photos, and it can make a huge difference just by changing up people's, positioning and clothing and lighting and who will find them. So it's I always say, it's not about changing who you are. It's about marketing yourself so that people get to know who you are. And that's a big thing that a lot of people don't get. Yeah.
They don't think of dating like a sales funnel.
Right. But it is.
You're feeding prospects into this thing that eventually you're hoping some good ones pop out at the end that you can convert.
People, it's an algorithm, right? When you change your pictures, you're going to change the inventory that you attract. I mean, it's that simple. But also, you're only as good as your worst picture. So you could have great pictures and there's that one picture that's killing your first impression, and you may get passed up from your soulmate just because you marketed yourself poorly.
Yes. Or as I would say, a good date.
Yes.
So, you don't have to put too much pressure on this.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Oh, don't get me started with that. I'm in alignment with you too.
Okay. So I love this. Confidence cut colors. And you have some resources for folks on this?
Yeah. I'm happy to give your listeners the guides, my free guides.
Super. That's great. And then let's talk. And I like that idea of starting with the external. This reminds me of a really powerful book that I read when I was really making some big changes, my own reinvention, I would say, in my late 30s. And it's called The Magic of Thinking Big. It's by David Schwartz. It has it sort of feels Dale Carnegie-esque. It's an older book. It's a little out of touch with modern day, but nonetheless, it's very uplifting. It's very motivating. And he talks about the importance of setting big goals and believing that you can do these things in order to set yourself in motion. But one of the things he talks about is the value of the way we move through the world and the way we behave in the world, and thus how it makes you feel about yourself and how it makes people treat you and think about you. I remember this correctly because I walk fast. I'm just a fast walker. I've got places to go. I've got long legs and I like to move. Well, I sometimes felt a little self-conscious about that. But he actually encourages people to walk faster. He says, walk 25% faster. And what it does is it says to the world, that person has some place to go, to be, versus the person who's just sort of moving along very slowly and so on. It's an energizing activity in a sense. I'm not prescribing that per se, but this conversation, I'm already pumped up right now.
I know, I can see that. Can I add something to that fast walk though too?
Yeah.
As long as you're making eye contact while you're doing it. Because I've had, and this pertains to the flirting piece and creating opportunity to meet people, is that I've worked with so many people who are fast walkers and they are missing all these people who are checking them out and opportunities to connect with people.
I see.
So I've had women are notorious for that because they'll be like looking down and like walking really fast. And I was coaching this one woman and she's, kind of like a badass in the financial world. And she was like ready for her next board meeting. She was just going, I'm like, where are you going so fast? And she's like, well, come on, we got to get to the bar to go flirt. I said, wait a second. You realize that from here to the bar are still opportunities to flirt. She goes, oh.
That's interesting.
Right. So I think the movement and energy is super important, and also being mindful of your body language that's matching that too is part of the attraction factor.
Touche.
Just to add.
So, okay. So, you work on this process, the external stuff.
Yes.
You make this change. It can be relatively fast. And then you start to dive internal with your clients.
Yes.
And so what does that look like? How do you help someone work on their emotional intelligence, their social intelligence, and so on?
Yeah, and this is where being a therapist for so many years really comes in. I can't imagine doing what I do without being a therapist because, for me, we all have a different story. We all have different journeys that shape us. And I like to sit down and get a good history from people from the time they were an embryo all the way up until now, and understanding their family dynamics and their ascribed roles growing up and their experiences in school, everything that has shaped them up until now. Because if they're, let's say, not happy with their dating life, or they have attracted a certain pattern of people, maybe they're attracting narcissists or, emotionally unavailable people. It's kind of backtracking and being a detective and saying, all right, where did it come from? And it's not to dwell on it, but it's just to have an understanding of it to help people push forward and make some changes. And so I really like to teach people like hands-on stuff. I have a lot of formulas and a lot of role playing that I like to do with people. I have a formula called the social engagement formula, and it helps with the social intelligence too, but it's moving conversations from factually based conversations that are really dry and boring. And that's where people come back and say, that was the most boring date. It felt like an interview, to something that's more fun and storytelling and emotive. And emotions and feelings are a big piece of my work. I really drive that home. It's probably one of the first things that I like to do with people. And, teaching emotional intelligence in the way that they use feeling words as they're even talking, as they're telling stories, because it's a big switch from how you connect with people than just describing something.
Can I ask, because not all my listeners are interested in dating. Now, I understand, many of the people who work with you as clients, this is their pain point in life. Dating is a big pain point in life. But the stuff that I'm hearing you talk about seems like it can help people in their friendships, in their family relationships, in their professional life. This idea of moving from facts to feelings can be useful with a sales prospect, with your boss, with your direct reports and so on. And just to bring it back to you for a moment, your red dress moment, it may have changed your dating life, but it also sounds like it changed your professional life primarily. And so as you work through this internal stuff, what are the kind of applications in these other areas?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, actually, because I straddle both worlds, both love and business. And I do a lot of work with people who are not single and just helping them with their life overall. And it's funny, no matter where people come from, everyone says that when they start working on this stuff, it just improves their life overall dramatically. To your point, their friendships start changing for the better. People have made drastic moves in their life. I think it's a realization. And that's why I like to work more holistically than that. And I tell people all the time, even though you're hiring me as the dating coach lady or just a confidence coach lady, I want you to know that this is more about your life. It's more about making these changes, because what shows up in one area of your life always leaks into others. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's just like the customer service agent is going to give you better customer service as a result of this.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these sort of formulas and things that you work with for this emotional and social intelligence. What else? What's another example of something that you might work with someone? They're wearing their red dress, so to speak. They're dressing the part, as I would like to say, and they're starting to recognize the opportunities that exist from very brief interactions to very deep ones. What are the other things that you see that people struggle with, and how do you help them?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the people that I work with tend to be like these wonderful, warm caretakers, but almost to a fault where they kind of lose themselves, right? And they're not demanding enough for themselves. They, having a hard time setting boundaries, being vulnerable, authentic. So a lot of like shape shifting is what I call it occurs, where they're morphing into like something else that they want, that they know that others want to see of them, just to be liked, or, that kind of thing. And so really it's, again, understanding where people are having trouble in this emotional and social intelligence and how it's showing up, and really like working with that.
I have to say this. This is so counterintuitive, what you're talking about. And so first of all, the world wants you to behave.
Yeah.
Right. The world wants you to behave in certain ways. And so people will conform because they want to be liked and they don't want conflict and anything. But the world doesn't like people who don't have a backbone.
Exactly.
Who will just say yes to everything and will become the thing that you want them to become. People like authenticity, even if it makes them uncomfortable at times.
Yes.
And I like that you're honing in on this tendency for people to be pleasers at the cost. Because if you try to please everyone else, you can't make yourself happy.
Right.
I just completely believe that, because you get pulled in too many directions in that way. You just can't, you're no longer an authentic person. And if you're reinventing yourself, you ought to reinvent yourself into the best person that you can be.
It's so true. And when I ask the question, like, who are you? I mean, this is where the reinvention is. So many times people are like, I don't really know. And so, because they've been conforming and shifting and shaping themselves into something that other people want of them, that they never really form their own identity. And to me, that's where the reinvention comes in. It's like, who are you separate from your partner, separate from like your coworkers, your friends? And it's almost like, like a time of pulling in. And I call it the selfish time. Like when people work with me, they know this. I said, you know what? While you're working with me, I want you to get really selfish. And for caretakers, that is a really hard word to hear.
It's very difficult to do. Yes.
Yeah. But it's crucial to your point. And I say, in your efforts to be nice and avoid conflict, you're actually creating more conflict.
Yeah, I agree. You're going to disappoint people
every time. Yeah. That's where the passive aggression comes in. That's where, all those dynamics. So it's hard for people, but like giving them really, again, I like giving homework assignments to people where they're like, saying no throughout the day when there's something that they don't like. I'll never forget. There was a woman I was working with, and we were up in the Bay Area, and I was coaching her. And on one side of the sidewalk, it was shaded. On the other side, it was sunny. And we were walking in the shady side, and she's shivering. And I was just like, wondering when she was going to say something, right?
Yes,
so I'm just
that's
like,
great.
Yeah. So, and she's like, Kim, so, do you think maybe you'd want to go to the sunny side? Would you enjoy the sun? And I stopped her and I said, would you like to go to the sunny side?
Yeah.
Would you enjoy being warmer? And she looked at me. And her eyes filled with tears, and she got it.
I'm about to start crying right now.
Right?
Yeah, it's such a powerful moment.
It was.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't think I ever really tell people how I feel and what I want. And I said, what if you started right now?
So I have a saying on the podcast, people are I hope they never get sick of hearing it, which is ask for what you want. And the world does not want you to ask for what you want, because then they have to react to their versus you to react to them. And such a powerful thing to identify. You changed that woman's life with that observation.
It was interesting because from that moment on, she really caught herself, you know, as she was doing that, and how that was just had like this ripple effect into like who she was even attracting. And so I see this also happening a lot in my practice, where people who are caretakers, who don't express their needs or set boundaries and express their feelings, often attract takers or narcissists or fixer-uppers, you know, because guess what? That's where their confidence lives.
I see.
Their confidence lives in taking care of others. So if they are stripped from that and just have to take care of themselves, it's almost like they don't know who they are. And so it's really getting comfortable with that discomfort.
I have to point out, in my opinion, the worst form of shape-shifting would be for someone to pursue a relationship because the world says you should be in a relationship.
Yeah,
right? You know, so you can think about that, right? Like everybody else is partnering up. Everybody else is having kids. I guess it's what I'm supposed to do, not I really want this thing. And it just so happens that other people happen to want it. And so that's why I talk about this. I want to use powerful language, right? It's an act of rebellion.
Yes.
To be able to say, this is not right for me. In that sense.
You know, can I just say something about that? It's really, and I love that you caught me earlier about, you know, not putting so much pressure on the soulmate or the partnership. And one of the things that I do with people mostly, because especially if somebody's been like more of a relationship person, is I tell them they're not allowed to get in a relationship until they have had experience.
During your selfish time.
Yes. To get to know themselves and almost like date themselves is to just embrace it. Like, I just talked to someone right before I came here, and he's been a relationship person his whole life. And I said, well, what would it be like to taste all the candy? Like, you've only tasted a Hershey bar and a Gobstopper. You have no clue what else is out there, dude. You know? And he like loved that. He's like,
and Gobstoppers are not that great anyways.
Honestly, they like crack your teeth, and you know, some of the flavors don't really work out. So he's like, wow. He's like, there's other flavors out there. I said, yeah, but you don't know that yet. So what would it be like to date without getting attached? And that's really foreign for people, but I think it's a huge part of people's journey.
That's so good. I really like that. So I want to ask you about charisma.
Yes.
So I think this is one of those words that everybody knows, and they sort of know what they like. I know charisma when I see it. It's like the Supreme Court definition of pornography.
Right.
You know it when you see it.
Exactly.
And we know that this is a highly valued trait.
Yes.
But I don't get the sense that people, they may seek to get fit. They may seek to build wealth. They may seek to build confidence. But I don't get the sense that many people seek to build charisma. And I think the initial step is to know what the hell charisma is.
Exactly.
If you want to actually do it. So what is charisma? And do I have it?
So glad you asked. More importantly, do you have it? Okay. Well, first of all.
No, less importantly, but I am curious.
Yes. Yeah. No. Well.
And how do I develop it?
Yeah. Because I love the word charisma because it kind of like summarized a lot of what I teach. I was trying to think about, well, what is it that I'm really doing with people? And, you know, when the word charisma came up, and that's how my podcast name, you know, came about.
The charisma
quotient isn't like, yeah, like there's some intelligence. There's some intelligence to charisma. Okay. And that what research says is that no one is born with charisma, which I thought was fascinating too, that it's something that's learned. And that is why I like it, because I believe that it's never too late to learn.
Everybody can get it.
Everybody can get it. It's a magnetism that draws people to one another. And I believe that, you know, when you create that magnetism, that's what creates attraction, creates confidence, creates connection. It's all of those things that we all inherently crave. Mm-hmm. Yet we make it more complicated than it is, and we think we're doomed, right? And so, I believe that charisma and confidence are closely intertwined.
I agree, yeah.
And the way that I see confidence, I define confidence as experience. I don't believe there's one person out there that's not confident. Why? Because there's always a place in somebody's life where they are confident in. And it's looking at that area and saying, how did you get more confident? Well, it's usually because you've had positive exposure to it and practice around it. And so when you have practice and it builds your confidence and you can become charismatic, people like you. You become attractive, but more importantly, you like you. And that's what attracts people.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but I definitely see that to be the case. So let's say I want to improve my charisma.
Yes. You want to get a little swagger?
Help me. How do I do it? What am I?
You're doing pretty good, okay. I will say, on your own. I know you really want to know.
Don't create a monster.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think charisma is also very personal. You know, it's to the eye of the beholder, but it's really about how when you look in the mirror, do you like you? But those three areas, the style, emotional, and social IQ, I believe are the ingredients to charisma. And so it's like kind of looking at, well, like how do I like my style? You know, your style's great, for instance.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can't see him, but he has these great red pants. I think that takes confidence to have like maroon red pants as a guy. I love that. And he's well dressed.
I've got good colors. I'm a gray and blue color guy now.
Yes, because you have blue eyes. The gray blue brings out some of the blue-ish in your eyes, and you're well groomed, which women really appreciate. I will say, man, look, we don't ask for much, but, you know, trim the nose hairs. It helps. You know,
this matters.
Really matter.
It matters. Yeah.
It matters. The nails, all of that. And then looking at your emotional intelligence, like how do you express yourself? How do you show vulnerability and authenticity? And I mean, you know the answer to that question. Usually people will have a sense about that in themselves, because I think that a lot of people, when they come to me, they say, yeah, no, I know that I'm a little slow to warm up. I know I'm a little bit guarded. I don't let people in until I trust them. I
see.
You know, and so for me, the work is, well, what if you let people know who you are right away? Like, what's scary about that?
You know, there's this, I've experienced this analogy in Asia and Australia, and it's, are you an egg or are you an avocado? So the idea of an egg, and people will say like the Japanese culture is egg-like, a very hard shell, but once you break through, you get everything.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
And the other one is Australian culture is like an avocado. So it's soft, but you're never getting into the pit, right? So it has this different feel to it. I mean, obviously I'm speaking in very big cultural generalities, but you can apply the egg avocado idea to an individual.
Oh, yeah.
Are you one of those people, right? It's very slow to warm up, but once you get in, you get everything.
Or are you Jell-O? Are you just...
And I recognize it's imperfect. Yeah, I recognize it's imperfect. There are probably other foods that you can use for this.
We could have fun with the food thing. I like that.
So I want to ask this question as an extrovert. And that is, I don't get the sense that extroversion is necessary for charisma.
No, it is not. In fact, I would say 80% of my clients they call themselves introverts.
Okay.
And so what's funny is that all these people who come in saying, I'm such an introvert, when they leave my coaching program, they look like an extrovert, you know? And so sometimes I think people falsely identify themselves even as introverts simply because their fears are defined as introversion.
Yes, they're not equal. That's right.
And when people get past those fears, they realize, oh my gosh, like I can do this. And, you know, I actually have a term for what happens to people, extroverts and introverts. I call it the charisma glow. And it happens to people who they experience this process. They'll say, Kim, my family and friends are saying that I'm glowing. Like they're asking me if I lost weight or did I get a facial? And I said, oh, you got the charisma glow. And they're like, I can't believe it, you know, but it's not me. I'm just simply putting a flashlight and showing them the light of where to go. And it takes people who really want to do the work and start shifting in their life to create that for themselves.
That's really wonderful. So let's do this. Let's try to, let's give some people some examples of charismatic people. So I did not give you this homework assignment, so I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, I love being on the spot. I'm an improviser.
Right. So, who are some people that you would consider to be charismatic, especially ones who might not fit the exemplar charisma? I think George Clooney.
Okay, I was just going to say George Clooney, but can I talk about George? I met George Clooney, and this was fascinating because when I walked into the room, and it was an amazing experience. All these A-listers were there, and I was in awe, and I saw George Clooney in the corner. And I was saying to myself, I wonder if he really is charismatic in person as he portrays himself on camera. And I have to back him up. He is that guy.
I get the sense he's not acting when he's acting. That's what makes George Clooney such a good actor.
Yeah, no, he really is. And here's what I saw that made him charismatic to me is that no matter who he spoke to, he was so focused on that person. And it didn't matter if it was a little old lady or the hottest model in the room. He made everyone feel like they mattered. And because of that, you could see the body language of the people receiving that from him feeling so good. You could see, how close that he would talk to people, how he would look at them, how he would make people laugh, so it's exemplified not just about what people say, but how they make people feel and the body language that is surrounding them. And the way he would just float through the room and just move and it was just very powerful. You see a lot of politicians doing that.
Yes, they are obvious candidates.
Yeah, and so a lot of people then would argue, well, is that authentic, right? Actors and politicians, people who are good speakers, and you can be charismatic and unauthentic, and you can be charismatic and authentic. Yes. I don't think it's one and the same necessarily, but charisma is the magnetism. It's that pull that people have on one another.
So who's the female side of
Sandra Bullock.
Okay.
I think she's really charismatic.
I like that a lot. She is quite authentic.
Yes.
Yes.
And she's funny, and she has that magnetism that it seems like people like her, she's likable. I think likability factor is huge in charisma.
It's not a surprise that she was the lead in Miss Congeniality.
Yeah, right.
Right? You know
exactly.
what I mean? So that's
exactly.
That's a fun one. That's a really fun one. So I think we're going to wrap up here. And we're going to, for people in the community, if you want to hear more from Kimmy, we're going to talk a little bit about flirting, and how to do it should you want to flirt, or should you want to teach your friends who need to learn to flirt because you're tired of listening to them complain about how they are suffering in the world of dating.
those poor sufferers.
This is really fantastic. As I said, this is part of a series that I'm going to do on reinvention. And hearing you talk about this stuff and listening to your approach, especially one that you've actually helped people reinvent themselves, has me really excited that I'm in the ballpark with these ideas. Do you have any sort of parting advice, especially for people who are, single for now or forever, who are celebrating their singlehood? That is, that they're looking at this as a special time in their life, a time for opportunity, and they're looking to kickstart this reinvention process.
Yes. And what I will say overall is that people love people who love themselves. And when you are in reinvention, it's about self-love without being so esoteric. It really is about that. When you get to the place where you look in the mirror and you love what you see both outside and in, that's when you got to that point where you could have anything, whether it's a partnership, relationship, or remaining single. It doesn't matter. It's all about you, and when you learn how to be alone, separate from a partner, I think that's a huge, transition. And people, when I went through my rites of passage, I call rites of passage, there was so many beautiful things that had to happen. It's like you go back to being an adolescent all over again, getting your mojo back and, doing the dances late at night as an adult. It almost feels crazy, but it's a really important time to, pull in and reinvent yourself. And this is a time also where people get like a health kickstart, yes. They get a new style. They, maybe start dating people they've never dreamed they would date before. And it's all really important process of just like, being happy with you.
Indeed. That's really well said. And I think people should be unapologetic about being selfish. In the sense that this is, if you want to be selfless, you need to first be selfish.
Yes.
And I use the safety cards and the safety briefings on an airplane.
Yeah.
You put on your oxygen mask first before helping others. Kimmy, this is fantastic. I really appreciate you doing this. And I just want to say, thank you. I appreciate you. And
thanks for having me. I appreciate you too. I feel like we could go on and on with this stuff, right?
Indeed. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and show notes, go to petermcgraw.com. Please subscribe and share with your single friends.